Hi, this is Austin Roney, a third grade teacher at the Syracuse Academy of Science and Citizenship. Hey third grade, welcome back to science class here on a Friday. This week has been really fun and we've been learning all about traits of animals and people. And remember, traits are things that we can observe either by the way an animal looks, some of its physical features, or the behavior and how it gets food, how it finds shelter, and how it survives. So today, instead of learning by reading, we're going to actually learn by doing. And so we're going to play a little game, and it's going to involve using different kinds of bird beaks to collect different kinds of food and seeing which beaks work best for which kinds of food. So first of all, let's talk about birds, because birds are an excellent example of how you can have the same kind of animal but with all sorts of different traits. And if you spend any time looking at birds or looking at some pictures of birds online, you can find that birds have such an enormous variety or different kinds of beaks. And here's a picture that shows you some of those things. Ducks, for example, have bills and allow them to dip their heads in the water and get food that way. You have woodpeckers that bore holes into trees or sometimes your house and try to find food that way. And then you have a bunch of other kinds of birds that eat seeds, dig up worms from the ground. And so birds find food in so many different ways, and those different kinds of beaks usually help them find those different kinds of foods more effectively. So depending on where a bird lives, it might have a different kind of beak. Another thing that's cool is because birds eat so many different kinds of foods, that explains to us why we have so many different kinds of birds living in the same environment, because those birds a lot of times don't compete for the same kind of food. One bird might eat seeds and another bird might eat worms, and so they can live together in the same place without competing over their own food supply. So now let's talk about the activity that we're going to do today. And here's a list of some things that you're going to need. First, we're going to have to find certain things that can represent beaks. And so a couple examples of what I'm using today are, I'm using kitchen tongs, which I found pretty easily, and then some tweezers, and then a binder or paper clip kind of thing. And each of these has pincers, or it looks like a beak in its own way. And for this activity, it doesn't matter if you can find those things. If you can't find tweezers or kitchen tongs or things like that, you can find a variety of other things in your house that are going to work perfectly fine for this activity. So some of the things that I would suggest are forks, spoons, you could even use chopsticks, you can use a clothespin if you have that, or anything else you can think of that will be able to pick things up and put them somewhere else. All of those things work fine. Now we have to find some other supplies that can be models for food. And some of the things that I'm going to use today are grains of rice, coffee beans, and ripped up newspaper. Again, this activity can work with many other different kinds of food that you can come up with. So maybe you have cereal like Cheerios, maybe you have pennies or other kinds of coins, maybe you have marbles or dice, or you don't have newspaper, but you have other kinds of paper that you can tear up into little pieces. Think creatively about this and come up with 3 different kinds of food that you can use to pick up with your beaks. The final 2 things you'll need are something to put your food in when you're picking it up. So this can be a plate, a bowl, or I'm going to use this oven container, which is a little bit bigger. And then you're going to need some kind of stopwatch or timer to time yourself when you're doing this. And so we are going to try to catch all 3 different kinds of food with all 3 different beaks. So let me show you how this works. So the first thing you want to do is find the food that you want to try to pick up first. So what I'm going to use first is rice. So I'm going to pour the rice all across my pan and try to spread it out evenly. Then I'm I'm going to pick which beak I want to try to use to pick up the rice for the first time. And I'm going to set my timer for 30 seconds. Each time you finish up your 30 seconds with a certain kind of beak, in some kind of notebook you want to write down how many pieces of food you were able to collect. Some beaks are probably going to be better for picking up certain kinds of food than others. So if your numbers are different, that's actually a good thing, and that's okay. So write down however many pieces you can collect in 30 seconds for each type of beak. Once you finish up with the rice, you can dump the rice out and you can start off on your next kind of food. And you're going to repeat that same process for all 3 different kinds of food. So when it's all said and done, you should have 9 different data points or things that you wrote down on your paper. So after you guys finish all of your time trials, you should have done it 9 times because we have 3 different kinds of food and 3 different beaks. Circle the highest number in each category of food. So for me, it looks like the binder clip was the best thing at picking up the rice. And it looks like the tongs were the best kind of beak for picking up coffee. And it looks like the tweezers were the best kind of beak for picking up paper. Your results are going to be different, especially if you use different materials. But part of what this does is it goes to show you that depending on the different kind of food, different kind of beaks are going to work well, and some other kinds are not going to work that well. And so part of what this teaches us about traits is that our traits are influenced by our environment. So even though our experiment today, or our model, was based on birds, you can think of different traits applying to all different kinds of animals. Think about teeth, for example. There are so many different kinds of animals which have teeth, but mostly those teeth are pretty different. If you've ever had a dog, you'll notice that they have really long teeth up here called canines. And those canines are for eating meat and other kinds of food that humans don't usually eat. Cats also have some pretty pronounced front teeth up here, and they're different than dogs and humans. So don't just think about birds and beaks as the only different kind of traits that animals can have. All the animals in the animal kingdom have different traits that help them do well in different environments. What I have are a few questions on Google Classroom about what you might learn from this activity. And head over there, there's a few questions to do. I want to know how your experiments went. What kind of food did you use? What kind of beaks did you use? Be creative and tell me what the best beak was for each kind of food. And then answer a couple more questions in Google Classroom. I hope you have an awesome Friday and an awesome weekend. I will see you back here on Monday or Tuesday for some more social studies and science. Have a great weekend.